So for the next 30 minutes, I'd love for you to tell us all about wherever you want to take this.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep, absolutely. So I'll start kind of giving you guys a little bit of where Girls of Virtue came from and how I ended up running 2 companies. And then my hope is, I know each of you came, some of you came because I adore y'all and y'all will always support me and I'm grateful for that. But then especially for the lawyers, I really wanted to know what drove you to want to hear this, what kind of stood out. So if there was anything particular I could speak to that might be helpful for you. When I think about lawyers, I'm forever grateful for y'all. I hate contracts. I don't do paperwork well. Not having good lease contracts in the beginning of my daily record experience of leasing that building has been a lesson learned for a new entrepreneur that I'll never do again. I will never ever sign a commercial lease, especially without having somebody else look at it for me first. But 4.5 years ago, I've been in the car business since I was 18. I am very much so the kid that my nonprofit is trying to help. I grew up with a single mom that is completely blind, struggled my way through high school, navigated a lot of just getting in trouble and drugs and things like that. Very quickly saw that I was not going to continue on the path that I was living if I didn't get out of the community that I was in. I joined the military. I did 2 years in the Army, and when I got kicked out because my first sergeant said if I was his daughter, he'd want me home. When I told him if I was his son, he'd tell me to finish what I started. He told me it was a good thing. My opinion didn't matter. Get the hell out of his office. I was like, yes, sir. Cool, got it. So I came back with really not a plan. I didn't know what to do, and I was working 3 jobs. I got in the car business. And the car business changed my life. It opened up doors for me that I never dreamed it would open up. It taught me credit, it taught me money, it taught me communication skills, things that I was coming out of high school, just no idea really how to do, because it was just something even back 20 years ago, we didn't teach to make sure we knew it as we were becoming young adults. So fast forward, I'd worked my way through the car business. Coggin Automotive moved me from Tallahassee, Florida to Jacksonville in 2011. I got engaged to a gentleman in the Navy. At that point, I was running the Nissan store in Atlantic, and he was a Submariner. 2 schedules really bad, somebody was going to give. So I went to work for 2 of the largest vendors in my industry, and I loved the job. I hated the process. It was all about selling people things, and it was never about trying to find out what was best for them. And it was just this continued cycle of not feeling like I was helping. I was just being told I had to go do a job because it was what my territory was expected to do. So December of 2019, I decided that January of 2020, I was going to jump. And I was like, what if I start this company? What if I can do this differently? So I said January, if by March of 2020, I made enough money to pay my mortgage, I would stay working for myself. So I quit my corporate job. I jumped. I was like, all right, I can do this. So by March of 2020, I'd done it. I had built a book of business that was big enough that my mortgage was paid for. I wanted to tithe. So I backed into how much money my company was going to need to make for my first year. And I needed to make $100,000 because $100,000 was going to net me about 60 was going to pay my car payment and my mortgage. And at the time I lived, I was on San Pablo on the water. I had my dream home, all the things. And I set up a 501(c) because I wanted to do it right. I didn't know anything about business, but I knew how to Google enough that if you were going to tithe 10% of your gross, I needed to have a 501(c) set up. So I set up a 501(c) and I backed into wanting to help with vocational trades. You said vocational trades. Mm-hmm. And that's what I said. If I had $10,000 because I was going to tithe 10% of my company's gross, I could help 5 young women earn a vocational trade. And I knew without a doubt with those trades, I could do for that young woman the same thing the car business did for me. I could teach, that could give them a financial stability that they didn't have coming out of high school. Most vocational trades, you can start $50,000, $60,000 a year, and you spend about $2,500. So I was like, all right, well, if they're $2,000 a piece, I can spend $10,000, I'll help 5 girls. So Girls of Virtue was born. And then by about May and June, I had built a decent book of business. I had clients in a couple different states for car dealers, and COVID shut everything down. So I lost all my book of business. I completely had to start over. But at the same time, still telling people that at this point I wanted to help 5 girls. And I personally am a visualized person. I can see what big picture view things are supposed to look like. But I was visualizing the Lord laughing at me. I could not shake this image that God was literally belly laughing at me and told me 5 wasn't his number and I needed to think bigger. And because I couldn't shake it, I kept praying about it. I kept asking what that was supposed to look like. And there was a couple things that kept coming up. One was statistically, if all I was going to do was to give that young girl a vocational trade, that 1 of my 5 would succeed. And I was like, well, I'm going to epically not be able to deal with that. Like, emotionally, I can't pour into 5 and know that 1 is going to succeed. What does this need to look like? How do I help another? So it became like, what would it take to make 3 of 5 succeed? And by the time I was done moving into the end of 2020, I wrote an entire business plan of the program I needed when I was a little girl. The program that would have kept me doing drugs, the programs that would have set me up in my 20s with the things that I needed to know. And the things that I wrote down as a young woman, I needed to know, and I needed to be grounded spiritually, mentally, physically, and financially. I needed to know my self-worth and identity wasn't tied to the things of the world, my job, a man, anything like that, who I was really made. I needed to understand proactive mental health. I needed to understand how to set healthy boundaries, how to communicate effectively. I had a good processing of any trauma that I'd been through. I had a good rhythm for health and nutrition. At that point, I was training for my first ultra. So I was just learning what that really looked like. Like, how do you eat well? How do you got it? If you've got an outlet, what does an outlet need to look like? I had a good understanding of my home. So my money was good. My credit was good. I knew what insurance and things like that set out to be. So November of 2020, I sold everything I owned. And I moved into an Airbnb and set out to open said center for Girls of Virtue. So I bounced from Airbnbs almost all of 2022 while still building both companies, while still volunteering at local high schools. Each year we've grown. We started at 1 high school in 2020. We're in 4 high schools today. And I have clients that we do vendor management for in 9 different states that we do monthly meetings with, in 11 states if it's annual. And November of 2021, I did Jack's Bridges, which is part of what helped build into becoming the Small Business Leader of the Year for 2023. April of 2022, we signed the lease on the old Daily Record building downtown. I negotiated with the owner of that property, not in my best interest, not knowing any better, that I would rehab his 9,000 square foot space for discounted rent. Let me tell you, don't do that. Please don't do it. It's not a good deal. I put way more money into this guy's building than I'm ever going to get back out of my discounted rent. But by the time we were done, we do have 6,000 square feet that is completely open to young women in our city. We have a gym, we have a yoga studio, we have a kitchen to teach health and nutrition. I have 2 private mental health counseling rooms. I have a life skills room, we have an art room, a computer lab, and an entire floor dedicated to what we call our executive life skills program, which is the vocational trades. And so what we do is we call it Engage, Equip, and Empower. Engage is local outreach. We go and meet with young women in the community. We do high schools and colleges where we're just meeting with young women, trying to reach them in the community. We open the center 5 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we hold free workshops in those 4 pillars. We bring in all kinds of local partners, from people from the chamber, from Bystar and Everbank to teach finance classes. We use Junior Achievement to teach financial literacy. They bring in fertility. We teach entrepreneurship. And the idea behind it is, as each girl comes in, we begin to pour into those 4 pillars for them. How do we help them become stable in those 4 pillars? And then I'm always looking for my Hope team, which is my mentors, they call it my mini Dellas. They joke, that's what their joke of it is. I call it the young girls in our city that have grit. But I am looking for the younger version of me. I'm looking for the kid that's willing to put into 60, 70 hours, that's willing to hustle, that'll take a bus ride to come hang out at my center because she knows she wants more. And we run them through what we call an executive life skills program. We're piloting our first program for 2024 right now. Took 5 girls. I agreed to give them a vocational trade if they showed up and did the work. We gave them a mentor. We gave them a mental health provider once a month. And we are actively looking for partners to do life coaching, financial coaching, and health coaching. And then with those young ladies, we just walk with them for 1 year. From that 1 year program, they have the option to extend up to 3. On their 2nd year, they have to teach at the center and they have to teach at a high school. And on their 3rd year, they actually have to mentor another young woman that's coming through the program. But it very much so started with a drive to want to just help. And then I just got engaged in our community and started meeting the kids in our community, and it's way worse than I thought it was. In the last 20 years, from when I was a student to where today, we don't teach our kids how to be adults. We let them graduate high school, and we actually completely forget to teach them what it means to navigate being a young adult. I think one of my most frustrating pieces is I could put 100 young women in a room, and I'm going to tell you almost all of them, over 80% are going to tell me they've been sexually abused before the day they turned 18. We ignore it, we pretend like it's not happening, we expect them to navigate that well. We still teach our kids how to identify rocks, but we forget to teach them that there's 3 credit bureaus. And again, I'm gonna fly to Italy to do nothing but climb on rocks. Like, I would sleep outside if I wasn't worried about something eating me, and I'm kind of bougie and want a nice hotel. But I want to be outside. But when I turned 18, I didn't need to know rocks. I needed to know the difference between confidence and Pinterest. And that's what's kind of drove doing the 2 companies. But at this point, I look back and was like, oh man, I've done 100-hour weeks for 4 years. So that's what we came to talk about, was what does it look like to navigate both those companies. And I will tell you the things from me, and then I want to hear what y'all are hoping to get out of it that's allowed me to be able to do that over a 4-year period. One of them is I'm extremely good at time management. My calendar is color-coded to the hour every day, no matter what. From 5 in the morning till 9, 10 o'clock at night, every company has a different color. Everything is booked to the hour, from my gym time to my Bible studies and then I block 1 day a week where I just don't block anything. That is, for me, it will be Sabbath. Like, I'll try to get quiet, go do something I love to do. And the other thing is rhythm, making sure that I kept my 4 pillars stable. That I had a good foundation at home, like a safe place to be. Now, given for the 2 years of my project on the center, most people don't know this. You smile because you do know this. I lived in our building during our renovations. So when I first signed the lease on the Della record building, it had severe termites. And if anything was ever going to make me quit, that might have been it. Because if you've never seen Formosans from about Memorial Day to 4th of July, it is the creepiest, grossest thing I've ever seen. Like, they swarm at night, and then they fall, and then there's things that, it's just bad. So I would sleep with a sheet over me in the, corporate room office that we had, built a bed for me to hide, and then clean up in the morning so nobody ever knew I was there, because that's how I paid our rent. I sold my home, took the money that I was using to pay my mortgage to pay for our center. So that's the crazy part of that. And that's where that rhythm I realized was off. Is the end of last year, I realized that it was this hamster wheel, and I had gone on vacation and realized that 7 of my 10-day vacation, I could not shut my head off. And was like, oh, wait a minute, this rhythm mattered. Like, making sure that I had the downtime, making sure that I had the time to go for a run, that I was doing the things that really lit a fire in my soul. And it really got to me as I asked one of the girls if they could do anything in the world, what if money didn't matter and they knew they wouldn't fail, what would they do? How would they spend? And we break down 168 hours in the day, and that I do that to back into time management. You have 168 hours in a week. What do you do with it? How do you spend it? And let's go backwards. How much do you need to sleep? How much time do you need to get ready? How much time do you need to eat? What are your obligated responsibilities that you absolutely have to do? Like, so for me, I have a puppy. She has to go for a walk. Like, no matter what I do, that dog has got to go outside. So I added that to my time. If you've got kids, you're in school, you've got a dedicated 40-hour-a-week job, back into it. And then at the end of it, what's left? And then what are you doing with that time? Is it chasing your dream? The problem for me is I got down to that time, and when I did that with the girls, and I didn't have any time. And I was like, ooh, wait a minute, this doesn't work. So I really leaned into that rhythm, and it's begun to help the fact that I feel like I can sustain both companies. And then the other thing is hire the right team. Oh, because when I had the wrong team, it's been detrimental. When I had the right team, we thrived. So was there anything particular when you guys saw the concept of running 2 companies that you guys were hoping to ask or talk about or get out of this conversation? I don't know. I don't want to be the only one talking. Y'all gotta talk to me.
Well, because of the little bit that I do already, I wanted to kind of get a sense of how many hours, your time, that is entailed in pursuing a nonprofit. And you've kind of given me an idea. It's a lot.
It's a lot. Yes, ma'am.
More than the average person would think. It's not just come home, go back to this, come home, go back to this. It's staying with it.
Yeah.
So your stay true to business is
It's definitely that. Every day goes from I might get a call about a vendor contract for a dealer's $1 million reinsurance account, and then I might jump off that call and jump on a call with a young lady that's in crisis, and I might move straight from that call because my AC's not working at my building, and I've got to navigate that, or the fridge broke, and then I'm gonna jump right off that and fight with the city because they took my grant away. So it is definitely learning how to kind of juggle that. One of the things I've had to learn is the word no. I didn't do well with that, especially that second and third year, because I was trying to grow and everybody was pulling different directions. Everybody was calling, everybody was emailing. And then the thing I've done in 2024 that has really upset a lot of people, I'm not doing email anymore. I'm just not. If you want me, reach out to my team or text me. Because I'm not an office. I don't sit in an office. I'm always out and I'm drowning in trying to keep up with my emails, and then I'm letting people down because you expect me to email back. So my email response now just says, text me. Text me. I'm not an office. Or here's a breakdown of who you can reach. Like, here's my volunteer coordinator. Here's my staff if you want program. Here's the connection if you need somebody you want to get involved. But if you're specifically looking for me, here's my cell number. Shoot me a text. I'm going to be on the road and you can reach me. And that was tough because that's not what everybody else wanted from me. I have so many people in my organization that continue to tell me you have to do email. I'm like, no, you have to do email. I don't have to do anything.
Okay, I'm fascinated by that because, like, I hate texting. If it's not about are you here yet or I'm running a few minutes late, don't text me because I'm probably not going to answer.
Okay.
Because the email to me is an easier thing for me to organize and keep track of, flag for follow-up, whatever.
I agree.
So that's just funny to me to hear.
Yeah.
You're the first person I've ever heard that said, hell with email, text, because I'm like, no, because you know what? I still miss my BlackBerry keyboard. and so I want a keyboard I can type on. I don't want to be doing this crap.
Yeah. And I'm grateful for people like you. And I need people like you in my office. Because when it comes to like contracts and agreements and all those kind of things, that's what we need. You're not going to get an email from me. I'm going to try to enter it at a stoplight because I'm not at a computer. So my email is going to be even worse versus I can send you an audio on a text message that answers your question. I can address everything that you need and I can get you to the person that you need. And I got that from one of my mentors. He owns 13 car dealerships. And I remember when I met him, I was doing vendor management for Zurich reinsurance portfolios. And I asked him to try to get his business, and he joked and said, I'll meet with you, but I'm not switching vendors. I was like, cool. So by the time we were done, we made an agreement. We would do coffee once a month. He would help me get to guys like him, and I would help him in his dealership. But he told me, he said, from off the bat, the only way you get me is text me. And I hated it because I was like, this is not where I'm supposed to do business. But then I finally realized, he's like, I'm not at a dealership because I got 13 of them. I'm going between each one all the time. I'm not at a computer. He goes, now if you need my assistant, here's my assistant. Email my assistant, she'll get you taken care of. If you need a calendar invite, my assistant still checks my email. So she every three times a week, she goes through my email and she files everything and says, okay, I can put this person on your calendar. Do you want this person on your calendar? But if you're looking to communicate with me, I was letting people down. I was very much so discouraging people, going, well, I emailed you 3 weeks ago and you didn't reply. And I'm like, there's 962 of those. Sorry. But it's two companies too. And that came down to the fact that right now, every year, we reach about 115 young women. Up until this year, they all call me. So, and they all text. They don't email. So,
In that same vein of organization and communication, do you use any programs for your calendar or your contacts that you recommend that are good?
I am an iPhone Google connected. I use everything on my iPhone. I like to talk to my AirPods. My AirPods take notes. My AirPods will make appointments. My AirPods will set reminders. So I am adamant that everything goes straight to my iCloud and then it connects to my laptop, my iPad, my watch, my computer. All jokes aside, I wrote the entire business plan with Girls of Virtue, running the Beach Boulevard Bridge, talking to my AirPods. The entire business plan I wrote that way. And what I would do is I would run, I called them whispers. I felt like God would put things on my heart. I would say, hey Siri, take a note. Siri would take a note. I would come back from my run, log on my computer, and I would organize my notes. By the time I was done, I wrote an entire business plan. It worked.
your board, how, it sounds as if you've gone through a number of people that have fit in, and I
Yeah.
can understand that. How did you go about doing that?
In the beginning, I hired my friends. Worst decision ever. I didn't know I needed a board. I set up an LLC because that's what businesses are supposed to do. So I set up my first business LLC, and then I set up my 501(c), and the guy called me and he's like, "Hey, who's your board?" I said, "I'm sorry, who's my what?" He's like, "You gotta have one of these." And I was like, "Oh, cool." I was like, "What does that mean?" And he goes, and the only thing he said to me, he goes, "Whoever's on your board can take your company." And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" And he goes, "They get voting power." He goes, "So just be careful of whoever the other two people, you have to have at least two, and they can't be family members. Who do you put?" So I called my best friend, because I obviously knew at least at a minimum she wasn't going to hurt me. And then I called another friend I'd been friends for 20 years that I trusted enough that I could ask business questions, and I put those on my board for the first year. They did nothing. Absolutely nothing. I loved them. They did nothing. My second year, I moved a few friends that had business experience on. Awesome. Terrible idea. Don't do that. The relationship became, especially in a startup, you're a working board. You're not an advisory council board. It's not like you get to meet with me once a quarter and I get to present to you what we did and you just tell me I did a good or bad job. I needed people in the trenches, going to schools with me, helping, talking about growth. You know, when we started renovating the Daily Record, it was like, "Hey, will you come help me actually renovate a building?" So by year 3, I brought on some business professionals that I had met through the chamber and local community. I failed them in regards to giving clear direction of what each of those roles needed to look like, because I didn't know what each of those roles needed to look like. So we had some great people that came in that first year, learned together. We did probably 3 really good vision planning sessions where we just I brought in a consultant one time. She helped us do like a big SWOT. We put everything, made my objectives, we assigned everybody roles. This will be the first year that I think we're finally going to go into the fact that we broke it down now, where I'm going to have an advisory board and then an executive board. So I want my advisory board into my day-to-day. Like, I'm doing one in legal, I'm going to do one in health, I'm going to do one in education, that can really begin to help us reach more young women in our city. And then I'm building my executive board over that for people that'll come with me every quarter and start talking about big growth. Because what I found, and this was interesting to some of the other nonprofits I talked to, is if I was putting everybody together in a board meeting, it was very unproductive. Because the people that were in my day-to-day with my girls wanted to talk about that. The guys that were helping with my business didn't want to talk about that. And they were getting frustrated at my board meetings because we weren't talking about the numbers and the money and the insurance and those kind of things. And you run out of time. You can't do both of those in the same meeting. So for 2025, we're moving that apart. We're going to do an executive board meeting where we're talking growth and big picture. Because at this point, the project worked. Like, my crazy concept idea is changing lives. Like, we see young women that started with us 2 years ago that are on a trajectory that would have never been their trajectory if they had not had support. So I'm going to put centers like this in every county. I need a board that wants to talk about that. But then I need the board that's in my day-to-day with my girls. Because we reached 115 young women last school year. I'm trying to and we saw each of those girls an average of 2 to 3 hours a month. My goal this year is to quadruple that and see them 20 hours a month, and all I've got to do to fix that is to get them to my center 1 day a week. So if I can shuttle them from a dropout prevention high school to me 1 day a week, I can quadruple the impact. So we're going to switch it. We're going to do advisory board that's kind of in that day-to-day and how do we help more girls, and then I'm putting together a bigger, like a legal. My lease has been my nightmare of a thing this last year. I have met with more attorneys. I have spent more money, all because I didn't put the word elevator in my lease. All jokes aside, he took it. He showed up at my building while I was out of the country in January, locked my lease on my elevator on my first floor, and he refuses to give it back. And because it's not in my lease, there's nothing I can do about it. Without really going and suing and spending a bunch of money, and I didn't have it, or did I have the capacity to navigate that, so I just didn't deal with it. So lesson learned. So I was going to try to put those bigger people, but I would definitely say board wise, be very strategic about who you put on your board. find out be clear about what their expectations are, how much time they can commit, what are they looking to do, and then what do you need? And then be very clear to them, okay, this is what I need and this is what this is gonna look like for you. Because if not, like even without, like I love that we're still friends and we were able to navigate through, hey, this is too much, I can't navigate both of these. But there's been some of my friends that were on my board that became frustration and that kind of conflict because there was not good communication. And I was stretched so thin between two companies that I was missing that they were feeling overwhelmed. So trying to make sure the clearer direction I give up front reduces the frustration I have on the people around me.
How open are you to young women who are being placed on probation from the court system to be ordered to come to your center?
I have not experienced that, but I would love to help them any way I could.
Okay.
Very much so. My heart, I call it my rescue mission. I want to help those kids that are in trouble, that are foster care, that are homeless, because without a doubt, no kid gets there without trauma first.
If you want to see some heartbreaking, truly heartbreaking situations, go to juvenile court and see the young women, the young girls, the teenage girls that are there, that are in all kinds of trouble, that are pregnant at the age of 13, and so much of what happens to them on Tuesday night at 11 o'clock at night. Their parents have no idea where they are, and their parents don't care.
Yep.
Dependency court as well.
Yeah, I mean, we go in the 3 dropout prevention high schools that we're in. Every one of we're in 3 dropout prevention high schools in River City Science Academy so far. We've been invited to about 4 more, and I just don't have the capacity yet to get there. We're in Lone Star, Biscayne, and My Micro. So we've got one on Dunn Avenue, one in Arlington, and one on the west side.
These are schools that are exclusively dropout prevention. Okay.
Correct. Every one of those students have been kicked out of traditional schools and thrown into a dropout prevention. Yeah. Which is interesting because I went to the same high school. Like, not that one, but exact same concept. You go in, they give you a syllabus, you get no teacher. There is a teacher, but they're only there to ask questions. You could graduate 3 years of high school in 1 year. So I did the same. I did 10th, 11th, and 12th all in 1 year. Because I was caught up doing drugs, and I knew that if I didn't get out, I wasn't going to get out. So I asked to be transferred to a dropout prevention high school because they said it was self-paced. So they give you a syllabus, you do your work, you take a test, and you move on. And I knew I'd get out, and then I went straight in the military. So yeah, all those kids are me's. And I know without a doubt the majority of them, there's trauma underneath. There's something that's happened that's caused that behavior.
There's always trauma underneath.
Yeah. And that's where the mental health piece is one of the things that if I'll spend the rest of my life, I will fight that we put mental health as a curriculum in our schools from a proactive standpoint. That if we're teaching our kids that we can do science and rocks for 6 months, why are we not teaching how to heal from trauma, how to cope well, how to process that? And what does that look like as a young woman? Because if we begin to teach it to our kids now, you change their lives in the future. We're just keep treating it reactively. And then we wonder why they're struggling.
Well, having done what I've done for 28 years, criminal trial work is, you're partially a lawyer, you're partially a counselor, you're partially a mental health expert, you're partially a forensic psychologist, and you hold hands a lot about stuff that really have nothing to do with the case, but you're trying to keep your client from going off the deep end.
So heart-wrenching.
One of the hardest things for people with mental health issues to do, in my experience, is walk away from their families, because it's so frequently that their families are at the very heart of why they developed their mental health issues, because that's where the trauma happened. Okay. And they're only going to get well if they walk away from their families, but if they don't have anywhere else to go and they don't have anybody else to help them, they're not going to leave.
Yeah, and that's where with our executive young ladies, I'm adamant about a vocational trade. I tell them flat out, I don't care which one you pick, and honestly don't care if you like it. I really don't. I mean, I hope you do. But at a minimum, I need to get you making enough money that you can pay your own bills. If I can get you making enough money that you can pay your own bills, then we can start working on the other 4 pillars. But if I can't get you away from home and get you making enough money that you can sustain paying rent, paying lights, paying food, then I can't fix anything else.
Let me ask you one other question. How ruthless are you willing to be?
This is Della.
Because you came to the right place if you're willing to be really, really ruthless.
I mean, I slept in a building for a year and a half with termites.
And other critters.
I mean, we had rats, we had termites, it was bad. I remember praying, being like, God, do I have Lotus, really? Like, if I was going to quit, this might be it.
As the ceiling was caving in, like she was in the middle of it. Yeah.
I'd risk it all.
Yeah,
Okay.
How often do you have to kick a girl that you're helping out of your program for some reason?
I've only had to remove a couple of the girls from the executive program. I've never had to kick them out of the program as a whole. I did take out of my 5 that we selected for executive girls this year, I have kicked 2 out. But that's just because I only had room for 5. I had 5 mentors and I had 2 that were doing absolutely nothing. So by July, I was like, this is over. I'm not doing this. I'm not chasing you. I'm still trying to build my own company. Like, I can't drag you along with me. If you're willing to go to work, let's go. But I was like, I need those 2 mentors to go to somebody that is willing to do the work. And which was probably one of the toughest ones I've had to do, because one of the girls in the program has been with me for 3 years, and she is my girl that the amount of trauma that young lady had seen. My MMA coach, because we teach self-defense on Tuesdays, because I'm adamant as a young woman, you need to know what to do if someone puts your hands on you and you don't want them to. But he said that young lady had seen so much trauma here in downtown Jacksonville that her natural fight or flight wouldn't work. Like, literally, it wouldn't work at all. So I drug her for a while, and then finally I just had to say, man, the amount of energy that I'm putting in to beg you to do this, I'm missing that 5 other girls are willing to put in the work. So but I told her, you're still part of my program. I still love you. You can still come to the center. You can take whatever workshop you want. But I make it very clear in the beginning, I'm not your after school program and you're not bullshitting my building. Period. And if you want to come in and you want to do the work, I got you. Let's go. But if you come in acting a fool, you can go home. But when they meet me in the schools, I do the same thing. Like, if you come in and you're disrupting my class, you can go back to class. You got to be here. Like, I'm not asking you to. So I think that kind of helps. It will happen, I'm sure.
They self-select mostly then.
Yeah. I'm sure there will come a point that we have some problems. I thank God that we have not yet. But that's the closest I've had to do.
We've got 1 minute left. Tell me about what are the 4 pillars again?
Spiritually, mentally, physically, and financially. And there's a lot kind of that goes into those. Spiritually is like your identity and your self-worth. Mental health is, really understanding healthy boundaries, communication skills, how to process trauma. What does that look like to live holistically? Mental health, self-care. We dive a lot into that. Physical is health and nutrition as a whole. So we do fitness, we teach nutrition classes, I teach cooking, meal prep classes on what does it mean to cook on a budget. And then the financially part is, I call it adulting 101. How do you manage your home?
How do you buy a car?
Yep, how do you buy a car, health insurance, taxes,
Balance the checkbook.
Yeah, all the things that, the day we turned 18, they say, here, you're an adult.
Right.
These are all the things you're now responsible to do. But never once in the 18 years of our school did we bother to teach that. And even good families, we've never taught mental health. How can you expect a parent to teach something they've never learned? It's just not realistic. Or you take my mom. My mom is completely blind and didn't come from a very good family. She's not teaching any of that to us. So I winged it for 20 years, which is just not fair.
I just wanted a little tidbit. I know we're running out of time, but what really has thrust me into being interested in your program was recently learning that there are young people who are just out of high school getting into car payments of $600, $700, $800. It's mind blowing. Like I said,
Oh, yeah.
at 73, I said, hey, that's a house. No, that's 2 house payments for me. But that's one of the things that's driving me. Make them aware of the financial responsibilities and what it takes. That alone will throw them back into poverty, even if they have a quote unquote good job.
Yep.
And they'll jump into car payments because I want this car. Well, get a lesser car, until you get to a point. They're paying $600, $700.
We market credit cards to our
$800.
students. Go to a college campus and how many credit cards are they marketed? But we
Yes.
never bothered to teach them compound interest.
Right.
So they go max it out, buy a bunch of shoes and a bunch of clothes, and then have a bunch of problems.
So I had one little part to that. After I retired, I taught an economics course at UNC Chapel Hill for 7 years. And what we discovered in the econ faculty is that we had kids who were getting ready to graduate from an elite university, who did not have any concept of what it was like to run their own lives.
Nice.
We were teaching them we actually had a no credit course in the evening. We taught college seniors getting ready to go out and work in the community who did not know how to balance a checkbook.
So not only are we doing this with our high schoolers, we're also doing it with
Yeah.
college graduates.
Yeah, nobody thinks of that. Nobody
Oh yeah,
thinks of
we
that.
have new girls with FAFSAs all the time, and it amazes me how quickly it gives them debt. Like if you go through a FAFSA application, it automatically gives them debt even if they've qualified for a grant. And you actually have to deselect it. And I've seen girls in bad neighborhoods, if you were to ever give them that $6,000, you just make them unsafe.
Yes.
Like you literally put them in danger because you gave them that money.
Oh, yeah.
And our FAFSA automatically gives it to them. It does not go over what debt is. It does not talk about the debt. It will automatically give it. And they qualified for complete school being paid for, and it still tells them to take out debt. But never talks about it. It's broken. Every bit of it's broken.
Della, that's amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh my God.